Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Jazz's Daily Brunch. We're here after hours. It's Friday, 5 p.m., and we're in for something special. We're calling this episode Perfect Pairings, Bourbon and Jazz, and it is being brought to you by our friends at Woodford Reserve, making some superb bourbon in Kentucky, of course, and they are the official bourbon of the Kentucky Derby. So, the Kentucky Derby was supposed to take place this weekend, Saturday, May 2nd, but was postponed until September. Well, Woodford Reserve actually reached out to me about their Kentucky Derby at Home initiative that not only honors the tradition of the Kentucky Derby, but also raises money for people impacted by the global coronavirus pandemic. So again, this is taking place Saturday, May 2nd. And get this, at 2 p.m., you can catch a demo on how to make the perfect mint julep, or a great mocktail recipe inspired by the Derby. And at 3 p.m., you can join a global toast to the Derby. And, when they first reached out to me to help promote the event, I was happy to do so. I am a racing fan. And as a matter of fact, my grandparents owned a racehorse down here in South Florida, and I used to go with them to tracks all the time. So I said, of course, we would help promote this incredible event. But you know what else happens to go really well with bourbon? I said, the answer is jazz, of course. And so I thought we would do something really fun here. I thought we would make some cocktails on air, and I would pair them with some classic jazz albums. Perfect Pairings, get it? And to help with that, we are joined by Woodford Reserve's brand ambassador here in Miami, Natalia Cardenas. So, Natalia, are you there?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. Welcome to the show. I love the outfit. You've got the Derby hat. You are ready to rock and roll.
We're looking forward to it.
This is a lot of fun, and thank you to Woodford Reserve again for agreeing to do this. Jazz and cocktails, just a classic combination. And I know you've, expert mixologists have put together some that you think would go really well with jazz albums. So I'm hoping your taste and my taste combined can make for a really nice evening.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to it.
So what's first on the menu?
We're going to start with the ever classic Woodford Reserve Mint Julep. So I have my Woodford Reserve Julep cup. So we're going to start. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, I don't like juleps. They're too sweet or they're too minty. But I tell people, you can customize it the way you'd like. All right, so we'll start with some mint. Just a few at the bottom. Quick muddle to release the oils, right? So another fun fact about Woodford and the Kentucky Derby is we actually sell $1,000 mint juleps for charity the day of the event.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe next time at the Derby, I'll spring for one.
There you go. So also, crushed ice is key because, as you'll notice, this cocktail is very spirit forward. So I have a what we call a Lewis bag, or you could just use a dish towel at home, wrap up some ice, use a handy mallet or
like that.
A bowling pin. Mm-hmm. The best 2 ounces of bourbon for the best 2 minutes in sports.
Amen to that.
Served. And then we have a mint syrup, or usually like a simple syrup to add. Just a touch. You can I have obviously a swizzle stick, which is meant for exactly this, diluting the cocktail, or a spoon. Think about it. My mom liked to use the back of spoons, right, at home. So all you're doing is here, again, you're going to dilute the bourbon a little bit, make it nice, incorporate the cocktail. Perfect, almost done. We're going to top off with some more crushed ice. And then you can't have a Derby without mint.
Oh, yeah.
I like to get a little bouquet and I wake it up like that. Put a little bit on the side. You can have a spoon if you'd like. This is actually a julep strainer, which they used to use back in the day to hold the ice against your teeth, right? And this is the first cocktail of Woodford Reserve Mint Julep.
Just beautiful. I cannot wait until they invent taste-o-vision or drink-o-vision because my mouth,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can imagine how good that smells. And Natalia, you said it yourself. This is the classic Kentucky Derby drink, right? And so I wanted something classic, something from what we call the Great American Songbook to match with this drink. The Great American Songbook, this is the canon of songs written by Broadway composers and film composers during the early, mid 20th century. People like George Gershwin, Irving Berlin, Jerome Kern. These are names that people have heard before. And as far as jazz musicians go, I wanted someone sophisticated and timeless, just like the julep itself. And so I can think of no better artist than Ella Fitzgerald, right? A legendary jazz vocalist, often called the First Lady of Song. Natalia, have you heard of scat singing?
I have.
Doobie doobie doo, where the vocalists kind of make up the syllables. She is the queen of scat singing, and she has such a pure, refreshing voice, much like a mint julep. But at the same time, she could be bold, she could be rich, she could be spirit forward, just like a Woodford Reserve. So the album that I brought up here, this is Ella Fitzgerald Sings the Cole Porter Songbook. It was recorded in 1956 with Ella and a full orchestra, and it was produced by Norman Granz, one of the iconic producers in all of jazz. She's singing music by Cole Porter, who contributed so many songs to that Great American Songbook that we discussed earlier. And not to mention, Natalia, Cole Porter was born in Indiana, okay, which borders Kentucky. We're getting close. Geographically, we're getting pretty close. Anyway, there are some definite standouts on this album. So if you're watching, crank up Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, whatever you got going, and listen to classic tunes. Anything Goes, Miss Otis Regrets, which was made famous later by Bette Midler, Begin the Begin, Night and Day, Love for Sale, What Is This Thing Called Love? So many tunes that have stood the test of time, just like this drink and just like the Kentucky Derby. So this is my perfect pairing for a mint julep. Ella Fitzgerald Sings the Cole Porter Songbook. Oh. All right, Natalia, what is next on our menu? I cannot wait.
Next, it actually gets its own actual Spire cup. So the Woodford Spire, let's chat about it for a second. It was launched 3 years ago, served at Churchill Downs. Last year, they sold as many Spires as mint juleps. It is a rose-colored drink. And what is the Derby but a run for the roses?
Nice.
So this one is very simple to make at home. You're going to fill your Spire cup, or a regular rocks glass will work, with some ice. Again, we're going to do about 1.5 ounces of Woodford Reserve bourbon. And then you're going to almost fill it with lemonade. Fresh lemonade, obviously, is the best. And a little bit of a splash of cranberry. And that's where you get those colors from. I always like to tell people, why did we choose these ingredients? Why lemonade, cranberry? But basically, if you know anything about Woodford, it actually is based off of our flavor wheel. We have over 212 identifiable flavors. So there's citrus notes, there's berries, dark fruit notes. So all we're doing is emphasizing those flavors already found in our bourbon.
Beautiful. Cheers. And from what I understand about Woodford Reserve, the distillery sits on the site of where they originally started distilling bourbon in Kentucky, right?
Yep, in 1812. That site was chosen because it sits on a limestone aquifer. So albeit it hasn't been distilling whiskey continuously, it is a National Historic Landmark.
Wow. So got a strong tradition, obviously, but this Woodford Spire is the new kid on the block. So something old, something new. When it came to the pairing, I was looking for something a little more modern. Okay. This Woodford Spire, it's zesty. It's got some punch. I like that nifty, glass that it's served in, but it sounds like it could also come in a punch bowl. So I was really looking for something with some good energy. Not to mention it has that raspberry mixed in, so it has a nice kind of fusion of flavors. So as serious jazz fans may have been listening to these sentences, they may have caught up on my hints. I was looking for something from the fusion era for this perfect pairing. So Natalia, jazz fusion as a movement kind of came in towards the 60s, 70s, and 80s when jazz artists started using sounds from popular music of the day. So like funk, rock, some very early hip hop, soul, to invigorate that traditional jazz sound. And for the first time, a lot of electronic instruments were being used. Electronic keyboards, synthesizers, synthesizers, drum pads, stuff like that. It was really a groundbreaking moment for jazz, and one of the key innovators in jazz fusion, just like Woodford Reserve in some ways, an innovator for bourbon, was Herbie Hancock, the keyboardist Herbie Hancock. And he came of age in the jazz tradition, but toward the 70s, he started getting into jazz fusion. So in 1973, he released this amazing album called Headhunters, and we'll go ahead and pull that up. So for this album, he put together an ensemble with a bunch of electric keyboards and synthesizers and all these unique percussion instruments, a range of woodwind instruments, electric bass, and he really kind of laid into the groove. It was a funky hip hop groove that was unlike anything that came about at the time. For a while, it was the best-selling jazz album of all time, and it would go on to influence countless hip hop artists, rappers, funk bands to this day. Chameleon, which kicks off the album, is a great tune. And it's one you've probably heard before. Ditto for Watermelon Man. These have become iconic jazz fusion tunes. And again, Natalia, not to mention those colors. You got the yellow for the lemon, the red for the raspberry. That kind of graphic on his head is your lemon garnish. This Herbie Hancock's Headhunters is my perfect pairing for the Woodford Spire. All right. And Natalia, what do you say we go ahead and move into our last cocktail? Saving the best for last, although these are all great, I got to admit.
All right. So we're going to start with the Woodford Highball. So a highball, I'm sure you've heard of it before, is a classic cocktail. It's basically for bartenders indicative of 1-in-1, right? Vodka sodas, gin and tonic, or for me, bourbon and sparkling water. It's also very versatile. We'll talk about that in a second. So the classic is simply 2 ounces of Woodford Reserve bourbon. And then you're going to top that with a little bit of sparkling water. Again, we're being responsible, so everything's measured. But we live in South Florida. The Kentucky Derby is held outdoors. You're dressed nice. It's hot. You want something refreshing. And this is going to be the one to do it. Here you can do different aromatic garnishes. So you could do the lemon peel. You could do berries. You could do mint, rosemary. It's whatever you'd like. Cheers.
Nice. Cheers. You can get creative with it. That's exactly what I like. Yeah, you said it, Natalia. The highball is kind of your quintessential mixed drink. And so for this perfect pairing, I had to go with, in my opinion, the quintessential jazz artist. And for me, that is trumpeter Miles Davis. Miles was pretty much at the forefront of almost every jazz movement, right? From bebop in the 1940s to jazz pop in the 1990s. You could point to almost any album in his discography and it would be a classic. Just like you can point to, any mixer for Highball and it would be really, really good, especially with Woodford Reserve. And the common theme, is just originality, boldness, right? Unforgettability, something that leaves such an impression on you. And so if I had to pick a kind of breakout album for Miles, it would be Birth of the Cool. So we can go ahead and put that album up as well. It was released in 1957. And just like the title suggests, it defines cool jazz. I mean, just look how cool that cover is. The vibes were all about, being laid back, swagger, think your sunglasses, the wisps of smoke. This is quintessential jazz. What's cool, though, is the songs are arranged almost like classical music. So a lot of rich harmonies, intricate melodies, complexity of flavor, if you will. But at the same time, it's got some really nice, refreshing improvised solos that just kind of lift your spirits. It was recorded by something called a nonette, so 9 musicians here, which for a jazz ensemble is pretty big. So you get a really nice sense of communion, of collectivity. It feels like a party, which is why for me it's a perfect pairing with something like the Woodford Highball. And the perfect thing, Birth of the Cool is absolutely the perfect thing to play at your next cocktail party, whenever that happens to be. And hopefully it will be soon. It was really one of the most influential albums in the history of jazz from one of the most influential musicians in the history of jazz. So an all-around winner and the perfect pairing for Woodford and the Woodford Highball. Natalia, this was really exciting. I don't know about you. I wish I had a cocktail in my hand. And I am really looking forward to this weekend's event. Can you tell us anything else that we should know about the Kentucky Derby at home?
I mean, it's just simple to do. Dress the part, get excited. I know if you go to churchilldowns.com, you're still able to virtually bet on the races, right? But yes, play the part.
And maybe play a little jazz while you're at it. You've got the albums to do so. Natalia, if people are interested in learning more about Woodford Reserve bourbon, where can they do so?
WoodfordReserve.com was key. It shows all the whiskeys, and it also shows where you could pick up a bottle locally.
Oh, excellent. And we are both down here in Miami, so maybe one of these days we'll get together and make some cocktails in person, like I say. And we wish that for all of you watching. So, Natalia, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun. The cocktails look delicious, and happy Kentucky Derby Day to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having us.
You're very welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.